so that everybody's aware, we are going to be recording this, so we have it for future reference as well. We can get started, John.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and really appreciate those of you that are able to be on the Teams meeting with all of us today. My name is John Bailey. I'm the CEO, Executive Director for the National School Plant Management Association, and I'm also the Director of Operations for Chesapeake Public Schools here in Chesapeake, Virginia. My pleasure to introduce Peter Cantone today with Pandemic Solutions. Peter's the CEO for Pandemic Solutions, and they're also a diamond partner with the National School Plant Management Association. Peter and a fine group of panelists today are going to really touch on some indoor air quality pieces today tied into to the ESSER funding. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Peter, welcome Peter, and then have Peter introduce the panelists today for our discussion. Peter?
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. First off, I'd like to thank John Bailey and the NSPMA for allowing Pandemic Solutions to be a diamond partner. When the executive committee offered the partnership to us, it was clear that the role of a diamond partner included the responsibility of informing and educating members of the NSPMA, and today we are looking to fulfill some of that responsibility. There are an overwhelming number of solutions that I'm sure many of you have been bombarded with when it comes to indoor air quality technology. And there is no doubt that many of you are under pressure to advise or recommend making the best decision possible for your school districts. The goal of today's presentation is to bring more clarity to these technologies in the hopes of allowing you to make a better decision for your schools. Today's presentation includes a variety of IAQ technologies with an emphasis on Atmosphere Solutions, a patented technology that is designed to use dielectric barrier discharge to produce the safest and most effective bipolar ionization. Our technology is ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funding eligible. With us today is the CEO of Atmosphere, Steve Levine, the CTO of Atmosphere, Tony Scott, and the sales director of Atmosphere, Kevin Fahey, who will be presenting. We also have a principal with Conzo Engineering, Jeremy McDonald. Jeremy has over 25 years of experience in HVAC design, energy services, and commissioning. His expertise includes indoor air quality assessments. Jeremy is LEED certified, CCP commissioning certified, a certified energy manager, and a professional engineer. He's also an adjunct professor for Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Jeremy's company, Conzo, performed the pilot test many of you may have heard we did at the City School District of New Rochelle. During this presentation, Jeremy will be walking you through how the data was collected and the test results. Lastly, we have Keith Watkins, who gave us the opportunity to do the pilot test. Most of you all know Keith as an Assistant Facilities Director of New Rochelle, a Certified Director of Facilities, past President of NSPMA, and the 2020 Plant Manager of the Year. After the presentation, we'll have approximately 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions you may have, so please save your questions for the end, or feel free to post a question in the chat box. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Some quick housekeeping: if anybody is not presenting, please mute yourselves, and we're off and running. Kevin, with that, I'll give the floor to you.
Well, thank you, Peter and John, and I appreciate this opportunity, but I'd first like to introduce our CEO, Steve Levine, to say a couple words.
Hi, thanks Kevin, and thanks Peter. Thanks for doing this. You know, Clean Air Group and Atmos started as an air testing company, back in 2000. And so we view all these technologies from the testing and validation grounds. We've been doing this 18 years now, because as a testing company, when we go into buildings and schools, we would be asked to look at the 11 different elements of indoor air quality and validate those results just by air testing alone. And when we started doing this, not everybody wanted to see those results without having an answer of how you could make the air quality better. And so 18 years ago, we brought over this technology from Europe, from Sweden, and this unique dielectric barrier discharge that we're going to talk about today. And we created many partnerships along the way. And we're proud to have Pandemic Solutions as one of our premier partners focusing on schools nationally. So today, hopefully you're going to learn about the unique differences in air purification solutions and why over 7,500 clients have chosen Atmos Air to provide its technology in over 100 million square feet. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our technology with you today and the many other technologies that people are looking at today. Kevin?
Thank you, Steve.
No, thanks, Steve. And as Peter said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to try to run through this pretty quickly to give plenty of time for the Q&A. And some of the areas I might not cover as thoroughly as you would like. So we've been through a lot in the last 15 months. The world's changed dramatically. Our lives have changed. Whoops. Hold on. Just getting back to having slide trouble there. Anyway, the world's changed and we see the air differently. Our focus on air is different. And I'm not sure why this keeps changing on me. I must have a time slide. But anyway, we see it differently. Air used to be taken for granted. We'd breathe the air, we wouldn't think much about it. But as a result of this pandemic we've been through, it has become top of mind, and people understand that air that we breathe is very important, and it isn't necessarily invisible. So what used to be a nice to have, indoor air quality, indoor air, is now a must have. And we want to help you make decisions on how to best improve the air in your indoor facilities. As Steve said earlier, we've done over 100 million square feet and 7,500 installations. And the basis of our approach to this air purification is the measurement and verification and showing people that it actually is making a difference inside their facility. We spend 90% of our time indoors. The EPA tells us that air pollution indoors is 5 times worse than outdoors. They also tell us that 50% of illnesses are caused by indoor air, and it's one of the top 5 health threats in the US today. So why is it important for education? It's going to help. Wow, this keeps, sorry about that. It's going to help our students. It's going to reduce the absenteeism for students. It will, I apologize for these slide mishaps. Okay, hopefully this sticks. It's going to help reduce absenteeism. It will make students and teachers more productive, especially those who suffer from allergies. And there's a study that was done by Dr. Joseph Allen, Harvard School of Public Health, back in 2015 that showed that lower VOC rates in schools will produce higher cognitive function. Staff will be happier and it'll help retain that. And you'll have the option by using indoor air quality procedure to reduce your outside air, so to reduce the operating cost, the heating and cooling of that outdoor air, and making your facility more sustainable. So there's two ways you can basically purify air, passively or actively. Passively is what most people are used to. You have an air handler, whether it be a rooftop, a water source heat pump, a fan coil unit, a unit ventilator in the classroom. You have air that passes through that air handler, and when it passes through, it gets conditioned, it gets purified with whatever technology you have in that air handler itself. But the point is, it waits, the air has to pass through that air handler to be clean. So it's a passive method. There's several different passive methods. One you're very familiar with is media filtration. And a lot of you have probably increased the efficiency of your filters as a result of the pandemic. By increasing your efficiency, you're also increasing the static pressure in your system. It creates higher fan pressure to get through and to circulate air properly throughout that space. So it's more costly in the filters, and it's more costly to run those. Then there's gas phase filtration, or carbon or potassium permanganate filters, and those are used primarily for odor, extreme odor issues, and they also are heavy with maintenance and costly to operate. Electronic air cleaners or electrostatic precipitators are nothing more than a collector cell. The air gets charged when it goes through your air handler, and a collector cell of the opposite charge will collect it. And it's great for collecting particles, but it's not going to help much with VOCs or microorganisms. Ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, or UVGI, uses a UVC wavelength, and that is very popular to be in the coil section of an air handler to keep the coils clean and the drain pans. Mainly will help prevent any microbial growth in these areas, but one of the things that is required is contact time. That light has to see that microorganism for 6 to 10 seconds to be able to inactivate it. So if you have a microorganism flying through your air handler and going through that chamber in a split second, it's not going to have a huge impact on it. Photocatalytic oxidation, that's a method that starts to become a little active because you have essentially a UV light and a catalyst, titanium dioxide, that will react to form what is called a hydroxyl radical. That hydroxyl radical is a disinfecting agent and can work very well on microbials. However, those hydroxyl radicals only last for 1 to 2 seconds, so they're only going to really clean and purify the microorganisms that are passing through that air handler. And then you've heard more recently about bipolar ionization. And one type of bipolar ionization is needlepoint. And needlepoint bipolar ionization is a different type than what we mentioned earlier, dielectric barrier discharge. What the needlepoint does is it will basically create an ion, which is a negative or positive oxygen molecule, that will last 10 to 30 seconds. And it's what's called a charged oxygen species. And these will help agglomerate particles within a space, but they really don't work well at breaking down VOCs or microorganisms. So as a result, they do get to the space, but they don't saturate it as well, and they're better for smaller areas rather than large commercial settings. Dry hydrogen peroxide is something that's become more popular as of late, and that's a technology that uses UV light, but it's also dependent on a certain degree of ambient air humidity to create these dry hydrogen peroxides. Now, hydrogen peroxide, as we know it in a 3% or greater solution, is great at disinfecting. But people aren't going to put that hydrogen peroxide inside their body at that solution. So we're not sure of what concentration of this dry hydrogen peroxide is actually getting into the occupied spaces where people are. And there's really not much test data that shows how effective that is in what we call the real world or in-use environment. So there's a lot to be learned about that, but in the appropriate concentrations, it will inactivate microorganisms. And then there's our bipolar ionization technology, which is, it's a non-thermal plasma dielectric barrier discharge. And this is an active technology because we try to saturate the indoor space where the source of contaminants are, and by doing that, inactivating, mitigating different contaminants within the air. And as Steve mentioned earlier, our basis has been in the air testing. We've do a lot of testing to verify and validate that it's working. And we know that by using this technology, you can also have the advantages of potentially reducing your outside air and saving on your energy needs. So let me talk a little bit more about this active air purification technology. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, that's a product that you would put inside a rooftop air handler. It's safe, it's patented, there's no chemical byproducts that are harmful in any way. It's been tested and proven to reduce microorganisms, viruses, bacteria, mold spores, which will help against disease transmission. And it's a continuous disinfection to the space by mitigating VOCs, agglomerating particles, and taking them out of the air. And to show that it's working, we like some sort of measurement. And on the lower right, you see one of the types of air quality monitors that we use that test and give you your air quality readings 24/7 in real time. You can get them on the device, you can get them on a computer, you can get them on your phone, so you know what the air quality is at all times, and you can trend that data to make sure it maintains in a quality status. What these measure generally are PM 2.5, VOCs, CO2, temperature, and relative humidity. So how does it work? You have air that passes over these tubes that are in your air handlers. Again, they could be in a rooftop, they could be in a fan coil, they could be in a unit ventilator. And as the air passes over these, they get ionized, meaning they gain or lose an electron. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then these ions go into the space and they mitigate and reduce the contaminants in that space. They act as little Pac-Men. They literally go out and find an oppositely charged contaminant and neutralize it. It makes your indoor air healthier and a safer place for people to gather. So let me talk a little bit about ions. Ion, as I said earlier, it's nothing more than a molecule with a net electric charge. If a molecule gains an electron, it becomes negative. If it loses one, it becomes positive. And I'll get into more detail on how we produce those and the type in a minute. But the ions are going to help improve the air quality within your space. Ions are nature's natural air cleaning process. If you go into high mountain elevations, you're going to have ion concentrations in the 1,000 to up to 3,000 ions per cubic centimeter. You get into homes, they get reduced. You get into cities, they're reduced even further because of the pollutants in these areas. So the concentrations are lower. When you get inside an average building, you're going to have ion readings around 100 ions per cubic centimeter or less. Why? Because people give off contaminants that the ions react against: furnishings, printers, copiers, floor coverings, all giving off contaminants, off-gassing VOCs, and these ions are used up in reducing those. So what our system does is it tries to be engineered to produce ions to get back to the ions you would have in a more pristine environment. And we, as Jeremy will talk about later, often commission jobs by showing that you're going to have ion concentrations of 500 to 1,500 ions per cubic centimeter when the system is on and active. So this is an image that you've seen a lot of the last 15 months, and it's we've done a lot of testing, and I'm going to get into that, but the way our technology works on a microorganism or a coronavirus is these positive and negative ions go out into the space. A negative oxygen molecule will be attracted to those spikes that you see on that. That's literally a protein outer shell of the coronavirus. Negative oxygen forms with a hydrogen on that spike and forms a hydroxyl radical. And a hydroxyl radical is very reactive. It will grab another hydrogen off that and basically form water, penetrate that outer membrane, which then, to get into a little more detail, the hydroxyl penetrates it, gets into the interior of the molecule, disrupting the RNA. And when it disrupts the RNA, the molecule can no longer replicate, can't reproduce, so it cannot infect. It's neutral. It's not dead or disappeared, but it's a neutral molecule that cannot be harmful or cause any disease with it getting and infecting people. We've tested our technology against the coronavirus in microchem labs. This is an ISO 17025 accredited lab. That's an international standard that makes sure that the laboratory has appropriate measurement and validation. This lab also does good lab practices, of course, that are required by the EPA and the FDA. So it's a very respected lab. Companies like Lysol use this lab to test theirs. And so that's important to know that we test in an accredited lab, and we also test with a protocol that simulates a real world occupied space environment, meaning the ion concentration was in the 500 to 15 ions per cubic centimeter inside this test chamber to show that our product actually worked at a 99.92% effective rate. We've done other testing on other microorganisms in the past at the same lab: staph, E. coli, MS2, which is a surrogate for neurovirus, and C. diff. That's a superbug you'll see in hospitals, and extremely difficult to inactivate. And all of these over a period of time were inactivated at a 99% effective rate. We've also tested VOCs. This particular test was at Syracuse Building, Energy, and Environmental Labs. This is the same lab. It's the well-known Dr. Jensen Zhang operates. They did all the testing for the Harvard School of Public Health. When they did their cognitive performance testing, we sent some product up there. They tested on the 8 most frequent VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that you would see in an indoor environment. And over a period of time, were proven to inactivate them by 90+%. And we do lots and lots of in-use real-world testing. I've said several times, Steve mentioned, and what you'll see later in the presentation, we install our product, we take baseline testing before it's installed and post-testing after it's installed to show that it's working at improving and decreasing the amount of particulates in the air by reducing the amount of VOCs in the air. The fact, in many cases, we test for microorganisms. You can't test for viruses in an indoor environment, but you can test for mold or bacteria. We show that those are improved. And what many people are concerned with is ozone. And we test to make sure that no ozone is being produced by the product. A lot of specs today require that you have ozone-free electronic air cleaners because ozone is a potential byproduct of some ionization products. Our product has been UL 2998 certified, which means verified zero ozone. You have to have 5 parts per billion or less of ozone to be certified. The UL 867 requires 50 parts per billion or less. And just to give you an idea, when we do some of the testing, the ambient air outside may have 40, 50 parts per billion. We've tested over 200 parts per billion. So having 5 parts per billion or less makes for basically an ozone-free environment. And this is possible by our patented non-thermal dielectric barrier discharge way of producing ions. People often ask, the question, is it going to be harmful? You breathe it in for long periods of time. Dr. Phil Tierno at NYU Medical Center, he was the former head of epidemiology and immunology and now a professor of microbiology at the medical school, did a white paper review on our technology, tested it, reviewed it against many other tests. And basically, this white paper is available, shows that the product actually works per the claims that are made by us, the manufacturer, and that there's many benefits to breathing in ionized, higher levels of ionization, such as decreased respiratory, lower metabolic rates, lower blood pressure, and many more. So in summary, this is a technology that's going to continually and actively disinfect the air, making it healthier by controlling the amount of positive and negative ions in that space. We can treat large volumes of air versus some of the other technologies out there. That we don't produce any harmful byproducts. We're effective at bacteria, mold, viruses, VOCs, and particles. And we treat the contamination at its source. We don't wait for contaminants to come through an air handler to be treated. This is very easy to install in existing air handlers, or many classrooms don't have any ventilation system. You can put in a portable standalone system. And again, one of the benefits versus something like media filtration is you're not going to restrict airflow and increase static pressure on your systems. Just to run through quickly some of the products. These are larger products that will handle spaces 10 to 15,000 square feet in size. To give you an idea, the upper right, that product is 28 inches long by 11 inches wide by 11 inches high. It can go into a duct system where just the tubes are within the duct, or the whole unit can be put within an air handler. It just uses 49 watts of power and draws 240 milliamps. So you can hook it up to a lighting circuit. There's no special electric, and there's no expensive use charge by using the system 24/7. Smaller systems, we have smaller devices, and for spaces, it's scalable anywhere from a small office up to a large indoor arena. And with this is very similar in the electrical consumption for these smaller units, but they would handle a couple thousand, 1,000 to 5,000 square feet of space. And then you have systems that you'd be more commonly used in a water source heat pump, unit ventilator in a classroom. Those units are literally on the upper right rather, are 4 by 6 in size, and the tube's just 3 inches long. And again, very low electric use, easy to fit into any unit ventilator, water source heat pump, or fan coil. And then for spaces that don't have any sort of ventilation, you can put in a portable unit, has a fan, a MERV 13 filter, and will pump ions into the space. Sometimes we use 1, other times 2 in a classroom environment. And as I've mentioned before, measuring the air quality is very important. And with this is a reset certified monitor, the Atmos-Aware Sense Edge. Reset certified just means it's validated to have accurate measurements. It measures carbon dioxide, particulate matter, 2.5, VOCs, temperature, relative humidity, and it trends the data so that you can analyze it over a period of time. And like I said before, it's real time, 24/7. Then a product that we've created called Atmos Smart is a sensor that goes in the duct, and it's one of a kind sensor to have in your duct. It's measuring the contaminants coming out of a space, mainly used for more rooftop air handler type applications where you're measuring the indoor air quality. And we've added a few sensors than the typical standard sensor I just showed you. We've added formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, and ozone. Ozone because we know the people's concern in measuring that using an electronic air cleaner. And one of the things that this does is we can connect this to the BMS, so you get your readings 24/7. You can program alerts if there's any issues with the air quality, and it also can hook up to your ion emitters, the equipment you saw on the prior slides, where based on the contaminant levels that it's reading, it can increase or decrease the ion output of the equipment to make it for a nice, neutral, perfectly balanced indoor environment. And then there is an energy savings aspect of this. People aren't looking to save as much energy today. They're actually increasing their outside air ventilation because of the pandemic. But we think in a post-pandemic, people will be utilizing this to reduce their operating costs by 20 to 30% of the HVAC bills. It'll extend filter length. It will also help extend the life expectancy of your HVAC equipment. And this is not something that's going to replace filters, but often people will reduce their filter efficiency because this will create larger particles and easier for the filters to pick up. And the reason you can do that is because the system's compliant with ASHRAE 62.1 IAQ indoor air quality procedure. And if you're interested in that, we can show you how the process, we have a program that will give you exactly the amount of outdoor air and that is that you can reduce and still be compliant with the ASHRAE IAQ procedure. So measurement and verification, as we've said several times, is very important to us. Just going to show you a couple case studies and then turn it over to Jeremy. We have experience in many markets, and we've worked with some of the largest companies in the world. They've vetted our product through measurement and verification. Besides the K through 12, we're in healthcare, colleges and universities, hospitality, sports, airports, commercial office buildings, and many more. This past December and January, Sioux Falls, South Dakota School District put the system in over 30 schools to improve the indoor air quality and help people feel more comfortable in a safer indoor air environment. Cherokee utilized this for a new facility that they built, and by using the indoor air quality procedure, they were able to reduce the tonnage of the air handlers required, the size of the ducts, and as a result, a system for this building that cost $106,000, they saved $122,000 in capital expenditure. And then they're going to save another $19,000 a year. So if you have a new facility being built, you can really save a lot of money, but in your existing facilities, you can also reduce your energy costs. And the last one, in California, they had an issue with VOCs and mold in a school district, put the system in. Third-party testing was performed by DTS Environmental and showed the reduction in VOCs and in mold spores. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Jerry McDonald, professional engineer at Kuth DeGunzo, to talk about some testing that he has done. Jeremy?
Right. Yep, we're unmuted. Well, thank you, Kevin. First, just want to run through testing fundamentals, talk about some of the data that we typically gather, and then talk about why do we want to do testing, especially in a K through 12 setting, and then go through some of the data that we gathered and the results from New Rochelle. Testing fundamentals. We want to do an independent testing, okay? In general, the process is very similar to third-party commissioning for the new construction process. We come up with a pre-functional, a functional test, an acceptance test, and then we like to do a seasonal test. Recommend transparent testing. One of the challenges with this virus is, as Kevin mentioned, and we all know, these nasty little COVID particles are, they're invisible. 0.12 nanometer is about 800 times as small as the diameter of a human hair. So we need to have trendable and recorded data so that the data that we're gathering on the data loggers we're using, and by the way, this is a picture from the New Rochelle testing on the right where we're showing the fluke particle counter and the ion counter in the middle of the room. We need to take the data that's being gathered and bring it into a trendable and open Excel file that people can see the data and how the data changes before the equipment is energized and after, so people can visualize this. We do recommend follow-up testing. Things can happen. Equipment can be turned off. There could be changes in the air handling unit operation, et cetera, et cetera. So we do recommend a seasonal test just to make sure that the equipment's still working, 6 to 8 months after the install. One point I want to emphasize, and we find this a lot, is you may find that there are HVAC problems. In some of our past experience, there was a university that went forward with a different IAQ technology than what we're talking about today. And what we found on initial testing is there really wasn't a lot of benefit in improved indoor air quality. Well, digging into the system, what we found is that there was some issues with VAV box minimum settings, and this technology relied on some airflow. So those fundamental HVAC issues had to be resolved to allow that IAQ technology to work appropriately. So I don't see that as a negative. I see that as that's why we do testing. We should be expected to find some problems, and this is the best time to fix them to make sure that we can provide the benefit that we're expecting for our students. Some typical data points. I show the picture, the yellow device on the desk is a particle counter, okay? That is just germane to most of the technologies that we're testing, be it air ionization, UV, HEPA filters, etc. Particle counter can tell you a lot on how we're improving the air quality. The device slightly to the right is a ion counter that we definitely want to look at to review the readings for the air ionization. As Kevin mentioned, ozone is on everyone's mind. We need to test for ozone. We also need to test for VOCs to see if the equipment's working correctly. I mentioned temp relative humidity with a question mark. I could also add airflow. Similar to commissioning of your mechanical systems, testing can go knee deep or it can go all the way. That's going to be a function of what type of space we're serving and what your particular viewpoint is on how far you want to test. Next slide. Okay. So with regards to New Rochelle School District, we tested 3 locations. We had a ducted ventilation area, which was a multi-purpose room. We had a traditional classroom served by a fan coil unit. And we had an area with no ventilation, a older classroom. You can see up on the right the Rainier unit, which Kevin mentioned earlier, was installed in this classroom. So why test? Well, I already mentioned, and we all know this, air is invisible. It's very, very hard for people to understand how this little nasty virus can make its way. In my head, I think of the nasty COVID virus as a vector, a very tiny vector that moves and does a lot of damage. So we have to kind of do this testing to bring to light how this little nasty virus works. The technology is only as good as the HVAC equipment I mentioned earlier. If the air handling unit isn't working and we have an air ionizer in the coil, you're not going to get much benefit if we're not exchanging our air. And lastly, Peter didn't mention, I'm a recovering school board member. I was on the Cohoes School Board for 6 years, which actually was a quite enjoyable experience. But I understand that in your business, superintendents, business managers, school boards, it's been my experience, people are willing to spend money, but they ultimately want to make sure they're good stewards of the taxpayer money, and that's a good thing. So if we can do the testing, if we can demonstrate those results, then everyone can feel assured that we have a successful project. So next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more about New Rochelle. So I'm going to go to some charts in the next, but right here we're showing the data results for the 3 cases we talked about: the ducted ventilation, the univent, and the no ventilation. And you'll have an opportunity to review this later. I know we're kind of going quick, but you can see from the data that we were able to reduce our particle count for our testing. We mostly focus on the 0.3 nanometer because that's the general size range of the virus. We do often see, I must mention, that as we amalgamate the particles, we do often see that bigger particles do get larger. Which is not typically a concern because ultimately as they get heavier, they're going to fall out and get caught up through cleaning or filters, etc. We definitely want to see our ion counts go up. As Kevin mentioned, you want to see 500 to 1500 um, ion particles per cubic centimeter. So we want to do that ion testing to make sure that our ion count is up, to make sure that we're saturating the air, as Kevin mentioned. Want to make sure that the ozone level is moderate. For this particular area, the background ozone level, i.e. outside, was about 221 parts per billion. You can see from our testing, we're under that 5 ppb range, and quite frankly, we're well below the background range. And ultimately, we want to see our VOC count come down, which you can see across the 3 tests. They certainly did come down, which is indicative that the equipment is working as intended. Next slide, please. So on this chart, what we're showing here is the ion count. And you can see from the dark blue to the light blue, we increased from about 280 to about 1,400 particles per cubic centimeter. That's a good thing. And you can see that it's a little bit of an eye test there, but we can also see that our ozone stayed within range and that our VOC counts went down. And also the next slide, to me, this is how we bring our data to management and say, this is what we thought would happen. This is actually what happened. So we can demonstrate that the equipment is actually working. Next slide, Kevin. And this is the particle count. All the way to the left is a 0.3 nanometer. You can see that it came down about 30% or so. This is about an hour of the unit running, and it's hard to see the graphs, and that's why we put the data labels in, so you can see that the larger particle counts also decreased. Again, we're just trying to demonstrate to the layperson what the testing device is actually doing. Next slide. So Peter, I think you're going to open up to questions and give us an opportunity to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kevin, for the presentation. I have some questions asked. One particular one, Keith, if you want to address it. Edward Keir mentioned, has this technology been approved by SED facilities?
Yeah, I know Ed very well. These are members from SFA. Ed's a real leader in the industry, has many more years experience, even more than myself, and he looks a lot better. We've had many conversations. My current supervisor spent 20 plus years as a director of facilities planning at SED. Carl and I jumped on a phone call and spoke with some folks up at SED, and they informed us that they were aware of some school projects that were approved with this technology. Now, again, their guidance that came out on August 21st related to UVC lighting and bipolar ionization, they allowed more flexibility with the UVC technology, and basically we're saying, they're not saying no, but at this time they felt they really gave a no response, and that it was really on the district to do their due diligence and own homework and do exactly what I feel New Rochelle did. And based on doing your own homework and your ability to want this technology implemented, that they weren't going to say no, but they really wanted to put the onus back on the district, and that school projects are being approved at SED in New York State.
Thank you, Keith.
Yep.
Any other questions? Anyone have?
I do, Peter. Peter, I have a question. As with Dr. Bailey on the call and Jimmy Martin, we're NSPMA. I'm also SFA. They're Virginia, South Carolina. You got North Carolina on here. You've got many states represented. It was shared with me last night, and something to do with, and I think I know the answer, but I thought you guys might want to add, and you can have a no response. And You know, you guys haven't really bashed other technology. You've just been very forefront with your science testing based answers to this technology, and I really appreciate that. There's a pretty large, significant class action lawsuit currently out with one named partner, which I believe their focus is NPBI, needle point bipolar ionization. I mean, based on your presentation today and the information you shared, that's really the linchpin or the defining information that separates technologies. And I think that your focus is to communicate the technology and the differences between them based on all the ozone, acetone concerns. Can you just share more on that?
Sure. Thank you. Tony, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Would you like to answer that?
Sure. I mean, basically, again, that is a different technology, and it operates on a different principle. Again, I'm not going to really comment on another manufacturer's technology. I don't know it intimately. But I will say with our technology is that what we really based our claims against have been test data. So when we talk about the fact that we can reduce particles, we point back to the anti-AHAM test we did with Intertech that shows that we can have a reduction on particles. When we talk about VOCs, we point to the Syracuse University studies. We talk about microorganisms. We have several studies that we've done with microchem that point to what we can do on microorganisms, coronavirus being one of them. And hundreds, or literally over 100 field case studies, things similar to what Jeremy did, where we went to actual spaces, where there was testing done, where there's really no accommodation made for the testing, and it shows the technology improved air quality, reduced particles, reduced VOCs, reduced bacteria, molds in many cases, and made for a cleaner quality of air with the system operating. So as far as what we're concerned, I think our difference really is just that. Our measurement and our verification, our testing data. We just don't make claims about our technology. We've proven the claims around our technology, and you continue to prove it by monitoring and measuring that with the various sensor products that our systems can be paired up with. So, I find that to be, if there's a difference in between our company and our technology, and I'll put it in a really broad category of many different air cleaning technologies, presented several of them at the beginning. I think it's the monitoring, the verification and validation, and the testing that we have behind the product.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone else have any questions or any other reservations or anything that is any concern? One thing I would like to put out there is that if you have environmental specialist or anybody in your corner that's concerned about the general BPI, we would be more than happy to have a meeting with that person, yourself, and anyone else, the EPA, ASHRAE, whoever it is. We're fully confident of the technology that we have. One thing I would like to also emphasize is that when we do any installs, pandemic solutions, part of the whole package is that we also will hire a third-party engineering company like Guth DeConzo to do the commissioning, to make sure that the technology is performing the way it should be, and that's part of the whole purchase.
Peter, I'll just add, for us here, we've been very proactive with many of the things that we've tried to do, implement, tried not to fall to the shiny, flashy, latest, greatest, but you have to step in a little bit and try things just to rule them out or rule them in. And I think for us, your comment about how this technology will prolong the life of filters. We've made a very large investment in some filter material that doesn't have the normal static pressure attributes of some of the filter materials. So for us, it's really maintaining and implementing like 3 or 4 main key strategies for our overall air and surface program here in New Rochelle. As you know, we put out a bid for this technology. We received a few bids back. We're reviewing them. It is a piggybackable bid, no matter where we land. But I think people have to remember, after the pandemic, there is cleaning for health. There is the normal, regular indoor air quality concerns. We like to do cleaning for health, so which includes the pandemic. But how was your flu season this year? Was it even mentioned? Is there anything now besides COVID? That's the question that we're all talking about. But I think overall, you have to have a holistic plan, and there's a good chance that I know that this technology is probably going to be a part of our holistic approach. So thanks again for your time.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? And yes, Edward, can you buy direct? Yeah, we can work something out. Absolutely. I believe that's maybe coming further down the line, but we can work something out.
Yeah, are you guys working? Are you working with a cooperative, a national cooperative, or like Omnia Partners? Are you looking to get this technology on a national? Like I said, our bid that went out has piggybacking language for the country. So depending on if that comes through, then you have a method there. But I would suggest working with a national cooperative to let folks have an option to purchase with you.
Yep. Yeah, we're working very closely with Omnia Partners right now, so we're in discussion. So we're working on that. That should happen soon. Great. Okay.
Peter.
Yep.
Jamie here. You're gonna have this presentation so that if I needed to show it to someone?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, we just had a letter from our attorneys coming from Department of Labor talking about air quality. They want us in 6 days to come up with a proposed plan, but with no regulations from anyone to help us set that into place. So
Funny
so
how
I'm
that
looking
happens.
at doing something, that's for sure.
All right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. It'll be the recording will be able to capture it right in the chat box. I could send it to you as well.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. I appreciate all of your time, and have a happy Memorial Day. Enjoy yourselves, and feel free to give me a call at any time. My number is 914-610. Be able to put it in the chat, or my email address. At any time, I'll be more than happy to help anybody out. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, John. Thank you, Keith. Once again. Steve, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Kevin, thank you. Jeremy.
Thanks. Yep.
Thanks again, Peter.
Thank you, John.